Welcome everyone. We are some 7 minutes late into the conversation right now. And the whole idea of doing this event today, being even after being a mental health company, is that a fair part of our life, and by a fair part, I mean around 10 to 11 hours today, we spend at work. Even though it is a 9-hour shift, but a lot of our time is spent at work. And it is very important for us to talk to the HR leaders so that we understand the problems that they are facing, the best practices that they have today, and how we can help them as a platform, how we can basically develop better solutions that, make their work easy. Because after all, the whole idea of understanding human brain, the whole idea of understanding how the behavior changes, that rests in the hand of doctors and psychotherapists today who have gone through formal qualifications and then formal training, and then they see a lot of people and help them with these things, right? So without further ado, I would like to invite our head of therapy, Sidhu Vadva, to the stage. She has more than 16 years of experience. She's trained by Beck Institute, US. And one thing that I love about her is that she is completely scientific in her processes, in her methodologies. So welcome, Sindhu. The stage is yours.
Yeah. Thank you and good evening, everyone. And I hope people do feel better. Headaches can be such an impediment to even having an experience of anything. 5 to 8 years back, this would have been an unusual sighting. Imagine on this panel, on this forum, you have two clinical mental health professionals, one a psychiatrist, a very senior psychiatrist, and one a psychotherapist. And this is a forum on employees' engagement where the best of human resources and minds are together. So the first question is, what are we doing here? Imagine this team and imagine what is the idea behind it. Why do we want to listen and learn and perhaps share and teach at some point? I guess the unanimous answer would be because good health matters to us, mental and physical, especially to the mental health professionals on the panel. And your employees matter to you. So it only makes sense that we leave these parochial paths and embrace behavioral and brain sciences that stick. Because when we want to look at the future of managing and developing human resources, it just makes sense to understand how the behaviors and the brain that drives it may flourish or perish in a system. So I want to bring to you three pillars of sharing my understanding. And these three pillars from not just my understanding as a therapist, but also conclusions from various researchers in the field of applied psychology. Now, think of them as some solid, time-tested perspectives we can lean on when we talk of employee experience. Employee experience, not just engagement, not increase in productivity only, not just motivation or retention, but how do we create employee experience and how brain and behavioral science is necessary to create good business. As a therapist, I see clients and patients who are employees too, right? So, and in 19 years of my therapy experience, I've discovered that 1/3 of the therapy conversation is about work. Like Pia was saying in the beginning, spending 12 hours at work. So obviously a lot of the things that factor in when we are talking about health are related to work. So, when people bring in their issues to therapy, we can't expect them to leave their beliefs, behaviors, biases, and barriers at home when they swipe their card at workplace. It's all entwined. And if we are to grow our people in work, we need to acknowledge the truth that the team, the boss, the gossip, the Monday morning, the deliverables, the office romance, the fight, the invisible discrimination, perhaps the diversity, bathroom panic attacks, the nervousness of presentation, reviews, annual appraisal, everything, the entire life cycle of a working individual affects the employee experience at home, just as the EMIs of the child's PTA or the marriage or the social relationships will impact employee experience at work. So it's so closely related. It is very important for us to understand the behavior and the outcome relationships. So, but what are these three pillars that I was mentioning? I feel that you may scoff at the first one, but hear me out. The Eagles sang famously, "Love will keep us alive." And it turns out that the need for love and connection is so inherent, so integral in all of us, and it's so hardwired that we seem to look for it everywhere, even at work. It is the first pillar, love and connection. And I don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean romantic love, but more importantly, reciprocal love. And this guy, Simon Sinek, I'm sure all of you have heard of him, in his podcast on leadership, he had interviewed a US Marine. And he asked this guy, so what motivates a Marine? Does the training academy instill something grand and immense that helps them carry the motivation forward? And the Marine says, love. Love fuels us. It drives us. It is at the center of our decision making. Love for our country, love for the Marine Corps, love for the people we train with. So love and connection, there's rather productive outcomes of, love is a rather productive outcome of connection. And connection that can only be built when there is safety. So you have love, which is the outcome, and then connection helps it. Connection that can only be built when there is safety, psychological safety that allows for people to emotionally express themselves or be their authentic selves. And safety is built by systems. And guess who builds the systems? Leaders. So at the heart of your people's need for love is their need to get it from their leaders or the team members. And, a lot of times when I'm talking to clients, they talk to me about this term called Innovation Lab. Now, I'm obviously far removed from the corporate playbook, but I hear of this term Innovation Lab, and when they describe it to me, I endorse it, I love it, but I do believe that if you could, or all of us could think of your employees or the relationship that you as a leader can foster with your employee as the Innovation Lab, then positive outcomes are guaranteed. Just before I signed into the session, I had a session with one of my clients, a young, enthusiastic employee who shows up every day for work in spite of debilitating trauma, simply because she has 3 very close friends at work, and the organization encouraged fostering of friendships at work. It suggests to me that the culture supports love and connection. And that's what I wanted to touch upon, that love and connection, the first pillar, is a really important one. The second pillar is meaning and purpose. Meaning in life is not just a theoretical or a philosophical construct, but it has a big bearing on human health and well-being. So imagine when you're lost in a jungle, your fancy Rolex will not get you out of there. It's the old, rusty, reliable navigational compass that will. It'll help you find direction out of there. So even in life, the emotional commitment and the need to immerse ourselves, which is what purpose inherently is, and which is what drives behaviors, it comes from what is meaningful to us. So knowing what your reliable navigational compass is, knowing what your employees' navigational compass is, and what is meaning and purpose. I see good leaders, they are meaning makers. And I love the word meaning makers. And of course, it's not something I came up with. I think I read it somewhere. Good leaders are meaning makers. Emotional commitment comes when employees find personal meaning from the work they do. Now, the meaning does not have to be grandiose. It is often inherently personal. So good leaders are meaning makers who help each employee find his or her personal meaning through their work activities. It's interesting to us behavioral scientists that how quickly our brains stop feeling rewarded and they start making us feel bored, disinterested, pessimistic, apathetic towards team members or distant from the organization goals when we are out of the basement of the Maslow's hierarchy. So the moment your basic needs are met out of the basement of the Maslow's hierarchy, you want to move to the penthouse of that pyramid. It is something that we are going to want just to feel rewarded. So it happens to all of us when food, shelter isn't under threat. We naturally progress and want to view the world from the glorious view of the penthouse, where we are the best versions of ourselves. So which is what the third pillar is, which is personal growth, or what I suppose typically is called the magic of self-actualization. And I want you to look at these three pillars: love and connection, meaning and purpose, and personal growth and self-actualization, because these are very important for us to consider. So I remember that Carl Rogers, the famous American psychologist, he used to often say and posit, his theory posited that common mental health disorders like anxiety and depression, they tend to occur more in individuals where the gap between the real self and the ideal self is wide. Now that gap is the perfect breeding ground for lack of autonomy, powerlessness, helplessness, worthlessness, inadequacy, pessimism, sense of malaise, pervasive sadness. Now, all of these are symptoms as well as ingredients for poor mental health. Now, this is all that I wanted to share with you, is that we can't expect employees to find help outside of work or get therapy outside of work when work influences their mental health, when it's so closely and intrinsically entwined. And what we can do is look at these three pillars, and as leaders and providers of policies and makers of policies, I wish we could look at these three pillars more closely. Now, I know that if we miss these pillars, we as a society would be standing on very shaky grounds. And that's all I wanted to share with all of you in my short while, nothing more.
Thanks a lot. So I think it's time to start our first panel. So I'm going to hand off the screen to Nishant Goyal, who's our Chief of Staff, so that he can start the first panel. Nishant, off to you, please.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Diversity, equity, and inclusion in the new era. For this panel, we have panelists Lieutenant Sandhya Suri and Ms. Nida Khanam. A brief introduction. Lieutenant Sandhya Suri, a Navy veteran and multi-time static speaker, is renowned for her work in mentorship, leadership, and business transformation over a 28-year-long career. Ms. Nida Khanam is the CHRO of Omega CT Mobility and has over 18 years of experience in HR and leadership transformation with a keen understanding of diverse cultures. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Nishant.
Most welcome, ma'am. So, to kick off this panel, I'd first like to invite both of you to share a few sentences on what is your base understanding of DEI. Let's start with Sandhya, ma'am.
When we get down to absolute brass tacks or the basic understanding of what DEI means, um, it is about an equal spacing, uh, not in terms of measurement or not in terms of, the same rules don't apply to people, right? Everybody is different. So, how much of that kind of diversity can you bring to the table? Furnish them with what is absolutely uh, pleasing to their mindset, first of all. So, what happens is we get attracted to what's really pleasing. So, when we have something that we can identify with in terms of what we value, in terms of what we expect, in terms of the provisions that needs to be made for us to be our optimal selves, right? Whether it's a workplace, whether it's anywhere else. Now, DEI becomes an integral part of the HR function. However, my perspective on that is that it is not just HR's responsibility. The entire leadership, top down, needs to, imbibe those values and constantly, without dropping a single time, be on the job for it. Because every employee, down the line is looking up to you for that kind of leadership. And most people will not do what you say, they will do what you do, they will mirror you. So that mirroring happens, and that mirroring is important. As leaders, we cannot drop the ball. But it's not just HR's perspective or job. It cannot be shouldered just by HR. This is a point I keep trying to make to most of the leaderships, that it's not just them. And we keep getting blamed for it a lot of times, and I'm sure most of the HR, people who are in HR positions, Nida, probably you also at some point in your career would have had that. The whole point about keeping people happy depends on HR. No, happiness depends on you, and it depends on everybody else who includes you in it.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's where I'm looking at it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am. Nida, ma'am, what's your take?
So I think I echo what uh, ma'am has just said. So the
Just
point
call
for
me
me
Sanjay,
is,
it's fine.
so the point here is that for me, yes, it is not HR. We are also human. So I think first of all, people need to include HR in the side also. But I think for me, it is about not taking it as an initiative. And today, it is not just D, E, and I, it is also B, the belongingness. So it is about normalizing the fact that it exists. We, as as Sandhya said, we look for what I like, what resonates. But that's human. That's very natural to us. Which what comes natural to us is to look for similarities. We miss out that we are made of differences also, and that's our uniqueness. Two siblings are not same. So how can two people and gone times when diversity was about gender. Today it is also about the language, the pedigree, whatnot, geography. It's physical appearance. People are talking of diversity in all field, every aspect. We differentiate. So I would differentiate Sandhya from maybe a haircut. So that's how it is. So diversity for me is about normalizing, not taking it as an initiative. So that's how I look at it.
Thank you, ma'am. So from now on, I'll ask some specific questions, and I'll expect 90 seconds should be sufficient for the answer, I hope. 90 to
Even
120
60,
seconds.
60 can be, depends on
Let's
your
see.
question.
Depends on the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. In that case, let's start with the first one. In your experience, what are some of the most effective strategies organizations can implement to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion among their employees?
Honestly, I think you know they'll be better able to, because I haven't yet reached that space where organizations are, ready for it. There's a lot of prep that happens even before you get to the space of DEI in terms of the initiative. So let's start from scratch. So when you're looking at scratch, you're looking at what are the policies that we've got. Are those policies actually updated, or they outdated? Most of us make do with acha, whatever is there in the government, let's just go ahead and follow, and we will form that basis, and we will do bare minimum feasible for compliance sake. We have to get beyond compliance first. So there are lots of steps to get to that part. So and I'm talking it from the point of businesses in India specifically, because in India, businesses are the crux of the economy. All right. Entrepreneurs, if you take, they've all started somewhere and they've reached somewhere. But the ones who've reached somewhere are the ones who have decided that these base policies are not enough. Let's do more. But it has come from that willingness to do more. So when you're talking about equity, you're talking about, diversity and inclusion. uh, you are talking about being fair, first of all. You're talking about, in terms of empowering people, you're talking about evaluating them as per the parameters that we have set for them. We are talking about actually evolving in the real sense of the word. So initiatives, I mean, they come far, ahead in the space. Probably Nida is going to be able to speak about that. But I work in a transition space of HR where we're trying to get there. And it's one of the messiest space, one of the toughest space, because when you talk about inclusion, HR needs to first of all become a part of the dialogue, right? Most of the time when you're growing and transiting, it's more about being given instructions to do something, and that's not how it works. It's talking about brainstorming, putting in those initiatives that work for you. You have to customize those as per your requirements, as well as much as the diversity of the people around you, the kind of people who are there. Their strengths is the most critical part. I keep saying this: focus on the strengths, fill up the gaps with other experts, and you need to then start nurturing that team and take it ahead. I think it's more than 120 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, Nidam, should I repeat or
No, 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 no. I think I'll just add. She has said, I think she's right. She has taken 120 seconds. So I'll just add to it. So, see, for me, what she said, just to add, it starts from scratch. It's not about just talking, advocating, but it's about doing. It's about not. So for me, and let me be very honest, sometimes we just want to copy. We want to do because we are in the race that we have to do DNI. We want to implement new initiatives because we have to be there on the edge. First thing to me, what comes is the assessment, the ground assessment. What is it? What is our internal policies and what are our external policies? And when I say internal, is the ground reality, the current assessment of our culture, environment. What do we need? The external is, are we aligned? Are we working with diverse customers? Are we working in terms of our brands, or in terms of products, services, are aligned to diversity? That's the first question. Then comes the internal assessment. Then comes looking at people who are aligned to the thought and creating a core team. Identifying that unconscious biases happens. And how do we consciously work on those unconscious biases? Communicating across, being transparent. And as we all say, it is not just HR or one individual, one core team. It starts from top. So everybody has to talk about it. It should be in the DNA. It should be in the DNA. It should be flowing in your blood. It cannot be an initiative sitting in the core team which is running. There has to be goals. There has to be crystal goals and measures. And I'm adding measures because if we just make it a tick in box, then it becomes that. If you really want it, and the normalization happens gradually. It cannot be ad hoc, or it cannot be one point. So you have to mix your team. You have to build team which drives it across, and you have to be a
okay?
part of it. So everybody has to be there.
Thank you. So when organizations go beyond meeting diversity quotas, what's the gap between just filling the quotas and creating a culture that's truly inclusive and equitable and creates a simple, equitable, inclusive work environment? What are the benefits that can be observed immediately to see if it's working correctly?
So I'll just probably, jump right in on this one. There are various process steps that would probably go to that. One is, first thing, and this is something that is constant in almost every possible initiative that you can take, or commitment that you make: change. All right. So you start with change, and you say, hey, we need to change the way we do things around here. So that kind of suggestion, or a light bulb moment where We are saying, okay, we've gotten to this stage. What is our next stage, and where are we going to go with that? So if you're talking about change, then there's got to be intent, first of all. So the intention of the board, I'll probably put it at the board or the top management, needs to be very, very crystal clear on, yes, this is what we want to do. After that is you talk about it. So the buzz starts, right? You're looking at the buzz, you're looking at how are people taking it. Do they even understand what a DEI is? Everybody can talk about DEI as a trend, for example. It's not a trend, it's not to be taken as a fad, but actual commitment to doing something, to progress to a state where you have an actual standard, right? You're setting some standard. So once the talk begins, your next steps is definitely about, like Nita said, you have to now start structuring, putting in those measures, which takes you to the next stage of action. Now action will not happen until you unlearn a lot of things. So what Nida was talking about in terms of the DNA, first of all, and also talking about, unconscious bias. Unconscious bias comes from somewhere else, right? It's coming from your conditioning of how a traditional business needs to be run or how it has always been. And then you have to unlearn all of that. It's literally about emptying your hands out and then filling it up with things that are new, but things that need to change. So once you do that, the change of DNA comes when you start unconditioning yourself from all the prior conditions, experiences you've had, and said, hey, this is a new world, and this world exists with, uh, you know, equal opportunities for everyone. But equal opportunities may differ from someone, right? It's a simple example is, hey, you're overlooking a wall to watch something on the other side. If you give everybody a same type of box to stand and look over it, the tall person will see it, but the short person will not. So for the short person, you probably need to put two boxes. That is where we are talking about, inclusion. You're talking about equity. You're talking about making things happen, and that is thereafter you can start measuring the results and saying, hey, okay, what's next? So this is a process, and it cannot be jumped. You can't jump even a single part of this. It's pretty much like, whether when you do sales, no matter what new trends have come into sales, you still eventually end up going spanko. You miss one part, you have to come back. So you cannot miss even a single link, because then it becomes the weak link. You have to come back and strengthen it, then progress forward. So that's my two bits about this.
Got Nida, ma'am.
Sure. I think very well said. And for me, when we talk of creating quota, is what I just said earlier. That it's not about copying and getting into the competition. That we also want to do something on D&I. First of all, D, E, I, and D all are, they are not same. You create diversity, then who would create those equitable workplace? Who would create that inclusion? So these are different, and different parameters, different things, different focus needs to come together to make it a seamless experience. So you have to blend it seamlessly, which is not something you can do it like that. It has to be part of your culture. As Sandhya just said, you have to empty your cup. Even when you talk of negativity and positivity, you have to empty what you have, and then only you can pour something new. So you have to, if this is what you want to drive, you have to understand that the focus has to be on all together, which has different meanings. So it is not about quota, it is about the seamless drive you have to have in everything, starting from your hiring to your development to your retention to your customer. You have to have seamless process, seamless transformation and transition.
Uh, Thank you. So, would you like to share a personal experience or anecdote where you have seen positive impact of diverse teams in driving innovation and problem solving?
Should I get
Sure, ma'am.
first? Okay.
Either.
So I'll come from the point where we had biases. So we have those stereotypes when we say that uh, women means HR, and that too corporate, and men means IR, which is plant. So those stereotyping. if I have to talk about myself, so I head corporate and plan both, right? So I have plans. If I have to talk of my organizations, my past experiences, I worked in different industries where, uh, if you talk of, so we have a production where there's one, we never had a female. I'm talking of my recent organization. And it was a big debate that should we place a woman there on the shop floor? And it was a big debate, big discussion, and we could do it. So the safety, everything has to be fine. But the first thing is that seamless acceptance that she's equal. So yes, there may be safety, but that safety is for everybody. So why to create only for her? Similarly, in my past, and I'm talking of all my, what I have seen, an organization which was engineering and automation. So there were women on the project sites, installation, commissioning, right? So sites which are for months, normally women would try and avoid, but those engineer girls were on the site, and that was again a success, again a seamless experience. So I think this is how I have seen, and there are many more. If I have to talk of industry, there are many more organizations, small firms, bigger organizations, everybody's trying to do. And we personally witness that. It is all about, mindset.
Okay, thank you. Sandhya ma'am, what's your take?
Well, I think the experiences that Nida has is quite interesting. I have resonance of it when I kind of when we joined the Navy, for example, there were very few women in the Navy. So I'm talking about something that's 29 years ago. All right. So it was difficult, and it's as difficult for the women as it was for the men. Okay. Uh, I am not going to really give examples of how I've seen it at the workplace. I'm going to disrupt this a little bit. And I really want to put this across as a thought. When we are talking about diversity, inclusion, there is an underlying, question that's going to pop up, and I will tell you why. So the initial, when we were talking about initial inclusion, and we were talking about gender biases mostly, say 10, 15 years ago, we're still doing it. Women started up, there were a lot of movements that started up and whatever. What happened in those movements was women started asking for their rights and demanding, we need to do this. And similarly, we have a third gender now demanding rights. I am just putting this question across because I'm not probably going to get another platform to put it across. When you touch upon such a basic thing, for example, as washrooms, all right, washrooms for men, women, are we creating another washroom for the third gender? If we are, great. It also adds to the cost. I'm talking in business terms and corporate terms of the amount of money you want to spend on it and the budget. There's a lot of fuss on it. Let me just tell you, budgets are always a fuss everywhere. When the decision to include the third gender to get them to use the female washroom happens, have women been asked, is it okay? Is it safe for them? Do they feel safe? Right? So there's a whole load of underlying undercurrents are there. So women by nature are empathetic mostly. So what happens is they instantly support. For example, it's also Pride Month, right? So we're supporting Pride, we're supporting LGBTQ, and I don't think there's an issue about it. Okay, I find people who are have phobias about it and people who support it, they are two very they're people who need to have conversations, but the conversation also needs to happen where when a decision is taken for things like these, are we canceling off women's rights also while we're trying to include others? It's a very, very tricky spot to be in for anybody who's trying to evolve into the next stage. And it is messy. which is why I said it's messy. It's messy because there's a whole lot of chaos going on in terms of personal space, in terms of safety, in terms of hygiene, and in terms of just wanting, a sense of comfort. It's a very, very tough call. Agreed, Pia. Absolutely not easy answers. It's very messy. We try to do the best we can, and but it doesn't mean we are against, right? So the assumption usually is, if I'm going to protest, hey, I don't want a third gender, or I don't want a common, washroom. It'll be, oh, you're not inclusive, or you're not that. The judgment comes instantly, and that overpowers every possible intent of anybody trying to move forward with the dialogue. So dialogues are
Okay.
really important on these platforms, and dialogues are really important even within those conversations, to put up these topics, ask the hard questions, and then be able to create something which works. It's
Okay.
not an easy space at all. I'm just throwing this out, probably call for another discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. One last question before I wrap this panel up. In your understanding, who is the leader in charge for DEI? Who should be in charge? And is it one person, or is it the entire CXOs who have to take place? Just one sentence should suffice, if not needed.
Every single person should be in charge. It's a leadership thing. You have to create the atmosphere to have teams, to have leaderships that are not afraid of losing their leadership position and taking on a team member position when required, which is where you play to your strengths, right?
Thank
So, yeah, but everybody eventually needs to lead the conversation. It cannot be a single top down. It eventually has to include everyone. Inclusion, remember? Thank you.
So I think for
uh,
me, it starts from top. It has to be absorbed. It has to be absorbed at every level. It has to be a conscious decision to normal. I keep repeating normalize, because till the time we normalize it, it becomes an initiative and it becomes a taboo, or something that, like, Sandhya just said about transgender. It will continue to let people think differently. So we have to have a seamless blend of everything, and starts from top.
Thank you, ma'am. To the audience, this was the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in New Era panel. Thank you, Sandhya ma'am. Thank you, Nida ma'am, for your valuable time and inputs.
Thank you, everyone.
For the next panel, employee engagement in the changing world, I would like to invite Dr. Bhupendra Kaushal and Dr. Tanaya Mishra.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir. So, brief intro. Dr. Tanaya Mishra is VP and HR head of India for Endo International and a strategic leader in the HR domain with 25 years of global experience. She is renowned for her expertise in creating swift, technology-driven workforce strategies and has been awarded as one of India's best CHROs and Asia's most aspirational women HR leaders. That is Dr. Tanaya for you. Uh, Dr. Bhupendra Kaushal is a highly experienced HR professional with 3 decades of experience across various sectors. He is currently serving as head of manufacturing HR with Zydus Wellness, focusing on aligning human resources functions with business strategies. He also holds advisory roles in several educational institutions and Ministry of Labour in Government of India. Dr. Bhupendra. So, to kick off this panel, employee engagement in the changing world, I'd like to ask the very first question. What are the standout characteristics of organizations that have successfully created a culture of high employee engagement and well-being? Let's start with Dr. Tanaya.
Look, engagement is something from within. So while we have various parameters, and most organizations have different types of employee engagement tools, whether it's a 360 or they do a culture survey or they do an employee engagement survey So there are there are different tools, but I think what really matters is how motivated are the employees? I mean, do they really want to be engaged, and do they want to do, are they aligned with the ethics and culture and the values of the company? Do they feel that they need to come to work every day? So I think those are really the parameters, in how employees are excited to come into the organization. I think that's really employee engagement for me.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, Bhupendra sir, what's your take?
Well, employee engagement is very much necessary. It is the base for any of the organization, right? When we talk about the marketing, whether it's a B2B marketing or the B2C marketing, but P2P is only the key philosophy, that people to people is the philosophy to run any of the business. So it is not that the HR takes a back space. The HR takes the front line space in any of the business, because multiple tools and practices are used for employee engagement, and without a engaged employee, nothing can no organization can work. Right, that is a fundamental uh, theory and philosophy of any of the organization. The more employees engaged, the more is the productivity and the more is a result for the company. Whether it's a shop floor, whether it's a organization having corporate and as a whole, but that is the basic of every other organization for successful driving. So that is
Thank you,
what
sir.
my thought process. Right.
Thank you, sir. So, during your wide and varied experience, what innovative approaches or initiatives you came across that effectively promoted employee engagement and well-being within the organizational culture?
Well,
Um,
each
so,
organization, has a different culture, organization culture, and we have to diagnose the culture, cultural need, and after diagnostic survey of cultural need, we have to devise the appropriate methodology for employee engagement. Right. I was assistant vice president in HR with the ILNFS, wherein handled 6 vertical. One was highly manufacturing. The second was at the same time another one was into hardcore IT enabled people, IT enabled services. So based upon the vertical needs, the engagement initiative were different. We cannot propel the same kind of engagement for all the verticals of the business. So depending upon the what kind of business we are into and what kind of human capital we are engaging into and what is the human capital need. So based upon this diagnostic, we have to apply different tools for the different tools for the different businesses within one organization itself. So it is so much interesting that the vertical, which is IT-enabled service, which is providing IT-enabled services and having young boys and girls, they have different aspiration. At the same time, the vertical, which has got into solid waste management, their aspirations are different. So we have to devise different employee engagement initiatives. So based upon the vertical needs within the same organization itself. So that is what I feel so.
thank you, sir. Tanay ma'am, what's your take?
Look, culture comes from a Latin word called cultus, which is an amalgamation of practices, of values, of how the way of life is. So culture of every organization is different. For instance, I took care of 400,000 people across Asia Pacific while I was a managing director with Accenture, and there were 5 verticals, all very different. Right? One was BPO, which was young. One was technology, which was tech. You had strategy, which was blue-blooded, strategy consulting, which was blue-blooded, and you had digital, which was very, very different again. Now, the culture of of all of them were different, but there was certain value system or certain culture that was a must-have, basis which the desire to engage with employees is defined by the culture of the company. But what really is engagement for an employee are very, very basic. One is, who is my supervisor or who is my reporting manager, right? Because the daily routine of an employee is the interaction that he or she has with the manager, and that's really the leader, the manager, the supervisor. So that's the face of the company for this person. The second bit is, what kind of learning capabilities is the organization giving this person? Is it something that he's getting to learn something new? Is it interesting? Is it something that he goes back home and has a good sleep because he's learned something? So that's the other thing. The third thing is the career path. How well is the career path designed for him to stick to the organization or be engaged with the organization? And last but not the least is obviously the broad framework of the organization, which is the brand name, the compensation, facilities and stuff like that. So that for me defines employee engagement in an organization within the culture of the organization.
Okay. So to next question, in your experience, how does a positive organizational culture impact employee well-being and their mental health? Let's start with Dr. Tanaya.
So I think mental well-being is, so if you look at it, and there have been enough surveys to say that mental wellness is what is the root cause of every organization, in the sense that mental health of our employees is paramount, because otherwise they will suffer from different diseases, considering the kind of work pressure that we have. So that's the reason why every organization today is spending a lot of money on mental well-being and ensuring that people have, there is coaching, there's counseling, there are different activities that people are following, and there are companies like yours as well as Roundglass and a lot of others around the world that are helping with this. To the extent of, they're trying to measure the quotient, the happiness quotient of employees. Now, coming back to your question, it is very important that that one understands, and you have lag indicators and you have lead indicators. Today, you have enough of AI and bots to understand what is really happening. So, the predictive indices or the predictive matrices will ensure that they throw up data. And I tell you, why is it important? Because I'll give you an example. I will not name the company. For instance, while all of us are familiar with Google and, but there is a separate team within Google, which is screening all kinds of accidents, deaths, okay? There is another set which is screening very deadly porn sites. What do you think happens to these young boys and girls? And I've been part of that organization, so I'm aware. So they go through a lot of mental trauma. So it's very essential that we take care of these young people, because this is they're very fragile. And because you see the constraints of the company in terms of a budget and getting people in. So it's very essential that this kind of mental or to ensure that they're mentally stable, because this in turn leads to a lot of suicide, a lot of trauma, a lot of broken families. So that's the importance of mental and physical wellness in an organization.
Thank you, ma'am. What's your take on it, sir, Dr. Bhupendra?
Well, I would say mental wellness is very much necessary. We all Indians are heterogeneous at the workplace and homogeneous at the home, at the residence. Once we are at home, we are homogeneous. Once we come to the workplace, we are heterogeneous. So opposite to this, if we see any, most of the foreigners, it is opposite to this. They are homogeneous at the workplace and heterogeneous at the, at their house or at their family. If somebody asks where is the wife, he will say, I will have to search where she is right now, because he is not knowing where is my wife, where is my children, because they are heterogeneous at the family side. But Indians are homogeneous in the workplace, homogeneous at the at their residence, at their family, and heterogeneous at the workplace. So what is the impact actually it takes place? No, the mindset is that if we ask to any Indian family or any Indian employees कि भाई कैसा चल रहा है आपका, तो वो बोलेगा कि साहब मेरा 2 पंच है, 1 लंच है, चल रहा है सर, टाइम कट रहा है, जी रहे हैं, अभी तो 2 साल रह गए हैं. So this is what the mental framework is. We think it is always, most of the time it is the negative side. We consider कि हम तो जी रहे हैं आपके राज में, टाइम कट रहा है, 2 पंच 1 लंच. This tagline confirms don't that the person has a negativity, at the back of the mind. So mental health wellness is needed. But if we talk about any English or any Japanese, they will ask you, how are you? They will say, I am fine, thank you. But Indian से पूछेंगे तो कभी भी ऐसा नहीं बोलेगा कि I am fine, thank you. जैसे जी रहे हैं, टाइम कट रहा है, बच्चे पल रहे हैं. So this is what mental well-being is required. You see the case of Japan, the country which was demolished way back in 1945, and that country survived in very short time and is a market leader in automobile industry only because of the mindset, only because of the philosophy of work and workship, only because of their quality system, only because of their progressive nature. So it is mental well-being which brings employee, which brings individual, which brings country, to lead from the front in any of the sector. Today, Japan is leading from the front, is a market leader in all automobile industry, only because of the mindset. Similarly, industries wherein the employees have positive mindset, they will definitely grow and they take the company forward. So the mental well-being, because everything is run through mind only. If we have a positive employee, there is a positive result. If there are negative employees, there is a negative result. So it is our duty as a leader to see that there should be a positivity in the shop floor. There should be positivity at the middle manager. There should be positivity among top line managers, so that all three are synced in one line and take it forward to achieve the organizational objective. So that is what my experience of last 27 years in different industries.
Thank you, sir. So going to the next question, what are the innovative approaches or initiatives that you have come across which effectively promote employee engagement and well-being within the organizational culture? Let's start with Tanaya ma'am.
So we had used big data, and through that we had brought in certain predictive PI. We used PI to understand what kind of issues are employees being faced with. So these are basically, see what happens is you have lag indicators and you have lead indicators. So this gave us some kind of lead indicators to ensure, to understand the fundamental psyche of employees and what is it that they're looking for. It gave us different parameters, basis which we then try to understand, to get in initiatives of different methods. So we also try to reskill people, and then one of the questions which came up is and I'm answering one of the questions which came up on the chat, where the person said that, look, what happens to mental well-being or mental state when you go through layoffs? Okay, so a lot of organizations have gone through layoffs during COVID, and that is when people started talking about 3 types of well-being: mental, physical, and financial. And every organization, therefore, then tried to do different things around all these 3 aspects. The financial aspect is obviously, how do you plan and stuff like that, but a lot of effort is being planned around the mental wellness of employees. So in terms of engagement, I think, so the lead indicators, therefore, helped us in building what kind of future ready, how do we make employees future ready? How do we really reskill? With ChatGPT coming in, with AI coming in, with bots coming in, so a lot of roles are going to get replaced. So how do we therefore ensure that we train employees to reskill themselves? How do we make them future ready? How do we make them agile? So these were some of the tools that we used through data to ensure that we were ready and that people continue to be engaged with the organization. And sometimes, even if we had to disengage with them, what is it that we need to do to ensure that there is empathetic approach that one follows?
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Sir, what's your take? Dr. Bhupendra sir.
Okay, I would say there are two thought process because we are into the business, and every business has got money conscious about the funds. So I would say that every initiative is not requiring money. When we talk about the innovative practices, most of the time, mere hearing to the employee gives us so much satisfaction that even if we spend any amount of money on the employees, that will not be contributing to that much. Giving a patience level hearing to each employee is very necessary. One, and number two, there are multiple non-monetary measures. Like pat on back, giving appreciation, having a coffee with the employee. The non-monetary incentives are non-monetary models and methodologies are many, wherein we can win over the heart. It is not necessary. It's an old philosophy that any initiative HR is taking, it's a money taking. It is not that. There are multiple innovative activities which are relating to the human resource initiative, like get well soon. Some employees, many employees are, they are sick. There is nobody to take care. What we did, SMS only, sending one SMS that please, we are missing you. Please get well soon. This SMS itself is so impactful that everybody was happy, and we did nothing other sending a small message. So there are many initiatives which innovatively we can think of. They are not requiring huge amount of money, but definitely these innovative initiatives helps to the employee well-being.
Thank you, sir. To the next question, how can organizations effectively measure and assess the level of employee engagement and well-being within the company?
Well,
Look,
Uh, let's start with ma'am.
okay.
So, look, you do have the employee engagement scores which come in to kind of, the people call it different things. Like I said, there's code of conducts in some places. There is Survey Monkey, that the other people do. So there are different tools today available. You can download a lot. There is great places to work that has a tool. And of course, they give you a scores, but I think, like I said, what really matters is what are really people saying, about the organization, about the practices, about the culture, and how evolved or involved is the organization with employees. I think Glassdoor, I'd like to be very brief and say, Glassdoor is a good way to understand where you are, what kind of practices you are. So that keeps you at check. Also, I think exits, when you're doing a gap analysis of the exits or doing a mind mapping of the exits, somebody was talking about stay conversations. Stay conversations are more about retention, but exit interviews still need to have, sometimes, you can't have stay interviews because people just want to leave. Now you've got to understand, why are people leaving? Are people leaving because of a particular practice, because of a culture, because of politics? What is it actually? So while we do not have a matrice to measure this, but I think it's, I put it very bluntly that, people do not leave an organization without a reason. If they are happy, they will continue to stay, and probably it will be a government kind of organization. So people leave because of managers, people leave because of politics, people leave because the future of the organization is bleak, leave for money. But I think it's more often than not, it's the environment, because nobody wants to go and start, as a mindset. We as do not like change, although change is the norm and change is, the truth. So I think it's more about parameters which are, hard-hitting parameters, which is still not there, by the way. But I think that is what we need to change about our way of thinking.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, Dr. Bhupendra.
I also feel that two way of measuring, one is through Glassdoor and second through employee exit interview. But both of them have, it is not a 100% sure formula. And Glassdoor, many organizations are doing that. They are requesting employee to write something good for the company. So what happened? That is not exactly the right tool, but somehow their parameters gives at least some reflection of it. This is one part. What I feel so, what I experience so, and second way, the exit interview. Since employee has to leave, and that interview is taken by the person, against whom that person is leaving. So he is not giving the right feedback. So either that exit interview should be taken by independent person, or who should not be his reporting boss, should be some third person. Then the right way, right feedback will come. But of course, these two tools are very much effective. But we have to analyze that how effectively we can utilize for understanding the need of the business. And definitely once we understand the need of the business, and we can take the corrective action in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Now, before we wrap up, the last question for this panel. From your perspective and your wide experience, from leadership, which role plays the shaping role or key role in a culture of high employee engagement and employees' mental well-being? Sir, let's.
Okay, very good question you asked for. See, as my predecessors have spoken, that every culture flows from top down. So that first of all, the business leader has to clearly mention that clearly be open to the new initiatives which is being taken by the HR in line with the business. So that has to be very very clearly told that this is my business and these other initiatives we are we have to see. At the same time, we have to see whether my internal policies are enough for bringing in change, or shall I have to import some new initiatives, and whether my new initiatives will support to my requirement. So we have to make a blend of the external policy versus internal policy and take a right decision, so that we are moving to the right direction. So that is what my thought process is. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, what's your take? Who's responsible for improving employee engagement and their mental well-being from the leadership?
Look, it's a joint responsibility. I don't think there's any one single person that is responsible for bringing in engagement or stickiness of the organization. One is the value system that the organization has. I think values play a very, very important role. And the organization that I currently work for, everything is around values, whether it's appraisal or it's an award, everything is around the values. So I think the value system and the mental framework of how they treat employees is extremely important. I think it's a joint responsibility of the leadership. We don't have a CEO. I mean, ours is a very different organization. We all report into the US. We do not have a CEO or a COO in the country at all. So we all report to the US. So I think it's about the fact that, even if there is a matrix organizations, it's a joint responsibility of the leadership as well as the employees themselves to progress the organization. And I think, if one is able to build that excitement, build that motivation, because you can't really fake that at all. It's the commitment of doing something good for the organization. I think it's a responsibility of everybody. I don't think it's any person's single responsibility to say, well, you are singly responsible for building the culture of the organization. I think it's a multiple stakeholder thing.
Thank you, ma'am. That's quite insightful. Thank you, Dr. Tanaya ma'am and Dr. Bhupendra sir. Now, as I wrap up this panel, I'd like to pass on the command to Pia ma'am, founder of the MindSmith.
Thank you so much, everyone. I have been hearing things and I've been making notes on the things that have been said, and I'm filled with immense gratitude for the invaluable insights and the conversations that have taken place. So we have explored the multifaceted nature of employee experience. We have recognized the critical role that employee wellness plays in shaping and thriving workplace within the future of work. We've also come to understand that employee wellness is not just a buzzword. It's an essential pillar of holistic employee experience. And we also saw that the significance there's a lot of significance of building a supportive culture, which comes from both ends. So there is no one person responsible for one thing, right? And a positive and inclusive work culture will promote open communication, safety, work-life balance, and overall wellness of the employees who, as we agreed, are people first. So for the last keynote of the day, let me please invite Dr. Satyan Sharma. He's our co-founder. He's a second generation psychiatrist trained by the esteemed Armed Forces Medical College, Pune. There's one thing before he starts. So I happened to meet Dr. Satyan Sharma in one of the events wherein he was the last speaker. This was an event by Citibook leaders. And I think it's sometime 5 years back that we have met. And since then, we have explored a lot of things. And today, we are founders of MindSmith together. And the whole idea of MindSmith came into picture. And the MindSmith exists today because I've been shadowing him for more than 2-3 years now, understanding how he operates, understanding what are his ideologies. And it is his how do I put it? It is his principles, his ideologies that MindSmith is built on today. So after you, Dr. Satyan.
Thank you. That doesn't put me under any pressure at all. Such a generous introduction. Okay, I'll try to live up to this. But when speaking in public, and especially when we are speaking about such heavy topics like this, mental health, employee engagement, employee retention, employee welfare, so many heavy words, it's very easy to get very boring very fast. So I think it's my responsibility to tell you a little story. Let's try to lighten things up a little. Everybody loves to listen to a good story. So let me tell you the story of this boy from a small town called, his name was Sushil, right? He comes from any of these tier 3, tier 4 small towns of India. But he had very good education, brilliant boy, very motivated, did very well at science and was able to crack one of the IITs, right? And once you are in an IIT, you are pretty much assured of a good life, ahead of you. Your future, your earnings, and certain decent comforts of life are more or less assured. But this boy Sushil was, by the time he finished with his engineering, he decided that probably it wasn't the exact thing he was looking for, and he started moving into something slightly more different. And he took on an artistic field, which, coming from a science background, was a shocker for everyone. Why would a guy trained in science want to go into arts? But he was doing exceptionally well there, even though he was not well known in that particular field. He made some remarkable initial moves. People started noticing him. He built up a very comfortable life for himself over time. He won accolades. He was recognized. He became pretty famous. And like life in artistic field and life in industries which probably are a little different from your core education, it became a little up and down, like almost everybody's lives. They are sine waves going up and down. Only thing is probably that the frequency of these sine waves may not be the same. So while everybody was admiring how well he was doing for himself, and because of the field of his choice, there would be some successes, there would be some, well, not so successful things which he would do, but he was admired. He was building a following for himself. He was well liked. He was respected, and I would say generally that he was doing well in life. When suddenly, during the lockdown days, we got the news that this small town boy who had gone to the IIT and made a decent name for himself died under mysterious circumstances, apparently. And when a little amount of investigation was done, it was found that probably he died because of suicide. But conspiracy theories came out. Was it suicide or was it a murder? Camouflage to look like suicide. So many doctors who were providing, care and consultation to this very famous person, which you by now must have guessed was Sushant, not Sushil. All kinds of theories floated along. And today, 3 years after we lost this brilliant, very successful, charming, interesting, healthy, bright boy to suicide, we do not have even one media house which tried to do a psychological autopsy, which tried to find out that this man, who was actually doing fairly well in his life, and the one movie on OTT, which was released after his death, actually became a trend for other actors to follow. Now, the best actors want to put their work out on OTT platforms rather than mainstream cinema. What happened? There were again conspiracy theories. There were again all kinds of accusations. He was made a political poster boy for a certain gains which people wanted to get. But till date, nobody has actually gone into why such a famous, well-known, well-loved, intelligent, smart, hardworking, and successful boy suddenly died by suicide. And that is true for so many other things. I will want to use Nida's line, which I want to hashtag, normalize the conversation. Like Nida ma'am very rightly said, the biggest problem is that whenever men especially are going through such difficult phases, we don't talk about mental health. We don't share our inner feelings with people who can actually talk to us and help. Because in India, men are programmed not to talk about feelings. Right? But here, I would like to bring you to the next hashtag, which Lieutenant Sandhya Suri ma'am shared with us. Hashtag focus on the strengths, but fill the gaps. So he had strength in terms of his raw talent, in terms of his hard work, but probably he could not fill that gap where he could get the right kind of support and help which was required for any person who will have a mental health issue. And in the end, who can have a mental health issue? Almost anybody and everybody today. The numbers and statistics which are coming out of the WHO are shocking. Now, we as mental health professionals always knew that there is a worldwide mental health pandemic happening. But it took the COVID virus pandemic to take the covers off. And now we know that there are very good people who on the surface appear to be normal, but are fighting quiet battles inside because of a culture of conspiracy rather of silence. And this is where I want to bring in the next hashtag, which Tanaya Mishra ma'am used very effectively today, that the value system cannot be faked. When we talk about mental health in our organization, it is the onus has to be on the founders and the key drivers and the leaders and everybody who wants to take initiative. Anybody who's read the first chapter of Stephen Covey's book, which says hashtag be proactive. Anyone and everyone is a brand ambassador for that value system. And that value system cannot be a conspiracy of silence. That value system has to be, we are here together in this. And our differences are what are going to contribute to our strengths. If everybody is going to be the same, life is going to be exceptionally boring very fast. And just like Dr. Bhupendra Kaushal today said, hashtag heterogeneous and homogeneous, and hashtag not to forget, 2 punch and 1 lunch. We need to bring people out of this mentality of just getting by doing barely enough, surviving. We need people to be thriving. A lot of people will teach us, will tell us how to live a good life. Very few leaders will be able to inspire people to go towards a great life. And that is when we will need an intersection of mental health specialists who understand and who will help to normalize, to help in early identification maybe of symptoms, who can do certain trainings, where we can actually make things happen, where instead of a culture of competition, we are able to create a culture of cooperation everywhere, worldwide. I mean, big data analysis everywhere. It has repeatedly thrown out this finding based on evidence that wherever you have a culture of cooperation in an office, where everybody is trying to pull each other up, the overall productivity of everybody increases. And together, such teams achieve much more than those traditional, very straight-jacketed and very hierarchical organizations are able to do. So organizations, as they are evolving, tend to start getting flatter. Just like Tanaya ma'am said, that their Indian operations do not have a CEO or a COO, right? Which means that there is a much more even playing field, not bound by laws of strict hierarchy, but by more of mutual respect and a celebration of each other's success. And if we continue having such discussions, such talks, I'm sure that over time we will be able to do a lot of good for organizations around us, for the people around us, and overall make our country and our communities, petri dishes of how greatness can be achieved, how wellness can be achieved, how mental health is not something which we need to hide and brush under the carpet, but something which we put out in the open and we talk about it. And when we talk about it with the right intent, with the right kind of a mindset, solutions have to follow. That is the rule of nature. We will find those solutions. We will find, of course, how do we create those bathroom spaces for the third gender? And it may be surprising, but not every company may come up with the same solution. And that's the fun part. That's the great part. That is where companies will create their own individual cultures, their own problem-solving mechanisms through creativity, through inclusiveness, through celebrating what in the end is the human spirit in its varied, beautiful colors, hues, and so with this short message, I've really enjoyed myself, especially Sindhu's initial keynote on how mindsets are created and how people respond to those. And I'm really looking forward to doing this more often and to learning more from them. And really compliments to Nishant. Even after getting admonished initially, he was able to pull off a very good and a very professional, panel moderation. I really congratulate him on this. And I think if Tanaya Madam is telling you something, it is something which you need to really write down and implement in your life without asking any questions. Thank you very much to all our very valuable and fantastic speakers. Thank you so very much to Nishant, Pia, Dr. Sindhu, Lieutenant Sandhya Suri. Thank you again, Nida Khanamji. Thank you again, Tanya Mishra ji, madam, and Dr. Bhupendra Kaushal. Also, for the best and the most consistent audience participation in the chats, I would like to thank Bharat TK also. Thank you very much for being and keeping us engaged in the chat boxes. I will now want to hand over everything to Pia to please conclude today's sessions, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Satyan. As usual, this has been a wonderful topic. This has been a wonderful session, and the way you put it all together, it's so beautiful. Thank you. You made my work so much easy. So I'm just going to say that the paradigm has shifted, and we now understand that employee experience is the new buzzword, right? And this is this holistic journey of a person within the company, from their first interaction as a potential candidate, maybe, to their exit and everything in between. Now, it would include every touch point, every interaction and emotion that an employee will experience throughout their employment tenure. And while employee engagement, like Tanaya ma'am was sharing, Tanaya ji said that there are tools. So employee engagement has been a key metric for measuring organizational success. But what I would like to say that it falls short in capturing the entirety of the employee experience. Now, engagement today is often viewed as one-dimensional concept, which focuses primarily on employees' level of commitment and satisfaction. But it fails to capture the emotional and psychological aspects of the employee journey, like a sense of purpose, belonging, growth, and fulfillment, something that Sindhu mentioned, right? So even employee wellness programs, these have been another staple in the quest for a healthy and productive workforce. While promoting physical and mental well-being is crucial, but these programs often overlook the broader context of the employee experience. And a standalone wellness program will not address deeper rooted issues that would impact employees' overall experience. So this is a survey that was done by Deloitte Canada, which says that if you run an wellness program for at least a year, then you get an ROI of 1.68%. No, 1.68 times, 1.6 times would be the ROI. But if you run it for more than 3 years, then your ROI goes to more than 3x, 300x that way. So I think it is time that we stop looking at employee initiatives in silos and look at it as a complete package, as employee experience is what I would request. And that is one message that I would like to leave everyone with, that let's start looking at employee programs, whether it is EAPs, whether it is engagement, whether it is wellness programs, as a holistic thing, as employee experience. Thank you so much. You have been a lovely audience, and thank you for taking time out on a Friday evening for us. We'll see you next month with some other topics which are of importance to the workplace culture. This is me, Pia Singh, founder of MindSmith, expressing my gratitude to each person present here. Thank you, and I wish you all a very lovely weekend. Take care.